Welcome back. Despite high inflation, labor shortages, and shipping problems, small business owners are feeling pretty optimistic about their economic outlook. That's according to the latest U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Business Index. Here to break it down for us is Neil Bradley, Executive Vice President and Chief Policy Officer at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Neil, always good to have you on the show. I want to begin with those small businesses that are feeling the strain the most. And I guess we shouldn't be surprised to find they are in the retail sector. Tell us what they're saying.
Well, it's like triple whammies for those in the retail sector, right? So you continue to have lingering effects of COVID, particularly for brick and mortar stores and in-person shopping, now compounded by supply chain issues that we've all been experiencing this holiday season, the critical season for retailers in terms of making their margins for the year. And then on top of that, the inflationary pressures. So you put all of that together, and the retail sector continues to be hit hard, even though we're seeing broader optimism for the future across the small business sector.
But the Q4 score came in at 63. That's the highest score of the pandemic era. So they're feeling optimistic about some things. What are the things that they're feeling upbeat about, particularly as far as taking on more staff and, increasing supplies?
Yeah, so we hit a new series high, for example, in terms of hiring. 38% of small businesses report that they intend to increase their headcount over the course of the next year. Of course, they're doing that in an extreme situation of a worker shortage crisis, but they know that they need more people to help meet the growing demand that's out there. They're confident in their revenues. They're confident in their overall business plan heading into the new year. They're less concerned about COVID than at any time during the pandemic. And the COVID concern has really been replaced by concerns on inflation and this worker shortage crisis.
And Neil, how about taking on more debt? I mean, are these small businesses, are you seeing a trend that more of them are taking out loans to make ends meet during this time?
Well, they are taking out loans in part to deal with some of these inflationary pressures. So in our survey, 71% reported that they've been impacted. Their small business has been impacted by inflation over the last several months. Of that, 63% have had to raise prices, and about 40% have actually taken out loans to deal with some of these price increases. That's actually a note of optimism from our perspective, because there is a belief that they're going to be able to recover that in their pricing strategies and their overall business framework. So, there's a lot of reason for optimism here as they navigate these headwinds. I think that the real question is how quickly can we return to the high level of optimism that we saw pre-pandemic. We're still about 10 points off our overall index of where we were right before the pandemic hit. We're headed in the right direction, managing these twin headwinds of inflation and worker shortages. If we can do that successfully, I predict we'll be right back to where we were in January of 2020.
And what do many businesses think about as far as if they have to raise prices again going forward? And also, what do they think happens to supply chains next year?
Yeah, supply chains are a huge problem, obviously, for small businesses this year. It's really difficult to predict what's going to happen as we enter the new year. I think we're all hoping that the supply chain kinks that we saw heading into this holiday buying season will be worked out by the time we reach the critical junctures, next fall and into early next winter. So I think there's an expectation that we work through these supply chain shortages. I think that the biggest concern that they have, that they're wondering whether or not it's going to linger, again, is this inflationary pressure and the worker shortage. Earlier this fall, we saw through the BLS statistics that we hit new record highs in terms of the number of individuals quitting their jobs, voluntarily quitting because of the tightness of the labor market. That showed up in our survey this time as well. We had a significant jump in the number of small businesses who are reporting that a significant problem for their operations today is retaining their current employees. And so that doesn't look like it's going to dissipate anytime soon. And that's going to be something that they're going to have to manage for a successful 2022.
And that makes you wonder how much more they need to do and what they need to do to incentivize those workers to stay. How many are looking at higher wages, which we know can be inflationary. But are a lot of small businesses feeling that they need to start paying their workers more, as you say, just to retain the ones they have, never mind to entice new ones?
No, you're exactly right. Some of these inflationary pressures are showing up in wages. We see an ability for workers today to move between industries, frankly, something that was a little bit more difficult maybe 2 or 3 years ago. As individuals move between industries and maybe move to higher paying industries, that increases pressure, particularly in the leisure, the hospitality, and the retail sectors. So we're seeing that price pressure on wages. That's particularly difficult often for small businesses to manage, because the question is how much of that increased cost can you pass along to consumers? They're already having to pass along increased costs because of supply chain disruptions and the inflation that's already occurred. How much more can they pass on going forward, I think, is the real question for them. And of course, small businesses often can't offer maybe some of the flexible work arrangements that a larger company can provide, particularly if you're in that retail, that hospitality space. But the one overarching advantage that small businesses have always had is that sense of community. In some of our separate polling that we've done at the US Chamber, one of the things that we're seeing is workers today, particularly in this post-pandemic world, want to see their values reflected in their employment. And there's no better place to have that happen than the family community of a small business. And so that's always been an advantage for employers on Main Street. I think it's going to become particularly important over the next several years.
And small business owners still this country's #1 employer, not to be forgot. Neil Bradley with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, thank you.